When we first started thinking about moving abroad, we had a lot of fears, especially me.
Yeah, Latin America was really our only option for a variety of reasons, but it seemed really dangerous and undeveloped to us, especially growing up in the United States with our kind of limited perspective.
After doing a lot of research, we realized it is not nearly as bad as we were programmed to believe.
We ended up choosing Ecuador in South America over all of the other possibilities, and after more than 5 years, we're still happy with that choice.
So in this video, we're going to talk about the 10 things that scared us the most about moving to Latin America and the reality after living here over 5 years.
When you travel or move abroad, safety is a major concern both offline and online, which is why we're really happy to talk about Surfshark, today's sponsor.
We always use a VPN to stay safe online. A VPN secures our data and our identity by protecting us from hackers, phishing scams, and ransomware attacks, and more.
There are so many scammers out there now. Before we used Surfshark, we were the victims of a malware attack.
Yeah, and I had 2 family members that were victimized as well. One was a victim of a ransomware attack, and it cost a lot of time and money, and they ended up just throwing away their whole computer, and another one had their identity stolen. So do not let this happen to you.
Surfshark never logs or collects your data, so you can feel safe knowing that no one is tracking you. They also have a cookie pop-up blocker, which is awesome because those things are so annoying.
Right now, Surfshark has a great offer. You'll get an extra 3 months free and 83% off with the 24-month VPN plan.
It's available for all of your devices with just one account. They have a 30-day money-back guarantee and 24/7 support.
Just scan the QR code right here or click the link in the description and use our promo code AmeliaNJP.
And now for our fears versus reality of living in Latin America, starting with number 1, and that is we were really afraid of crime.
Yes, we were. Oh my gosh, when we first got to Cuenca, I had the money belt, I had my whole person locked down, and I was so paranoid that somebody was going to try to steal our phones because we just read all about how terrible it was and you can't walk out looking at your phone and this, that, and the other. And then we got to Cuenca and everybody's like this on their phone, and I realized that we had let those fears overtake us.
Yeah, they're running into us on the street because they're on their phone not paying any attention. And that is like, if I took a picture of a street, half of the people would be walking on their phone. But wherever there are people, there is going to be crime, and the crime is getting worse worldwide, including here in Ecuador. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
You know, and the violent crime is up here because of the current drug war that's going on between the gangs and the government. So it is what it is, you know, it's getting worse everywhere worldwide, and we just do what we can to make sure we stay safe. We stay in safe areas. We avoid parts of town that we know are unsafe. If we don't know what a part of town is, we go with a guide or a driver who knows the area so that we don't put ourselves in those situations. But for the most part, where we have lived in Cuenca, in Olón, in Manta, and now we're back in the highlands, it's felt very safe to us where we live and the places that we go.
Theft is a reality, and we did get pickpocketed on the bus in Montanita. Robberies do happen here in Ecuador and throughout Latin America as well, and unfortunately they have also increased. There have been more moto robberies. There's also been home robberies. They're not widespread, but that does happen, unfortunately.
Violent crimes also increased a lot. I know the homicide rate in Ecuador has gone way up. However, if you subtract out the prison massacres, which are all gang related, and then also any of the gang turf wars, then it's really not that much different than it was before the pandemic. Number 2 is that we were afraid of being scammed or gringoed.
Yes, and that does happen. We have heard of a lot of scams throughout our time here in Ecuador, and these are scams that are popular throughout Latin America. So this is a reality. You really need to be mindful of that nice guy that comes up to you at the bus station and offers to put your backpack up on the top with your laptop and all your valuables in it, and then you never see it again, because they're not supposed to be doing that. We know several people who have fallen victim to this scam. You need to keep your stuff, your backpack with you. Do not put it under the seat either. because there are people who will crawl under there and slice that open and steal your stuff.
We also have a friend in Cuenca who had his backpack stolen. They put foam on his coat or his backpack, and then they said, oh, you have something on your backpack. And when he took it off to look, they grabbed it and ran.
And getting gringoed, that is a reality. It doesn't happen to us very often. We've had it happen once in a while. So the way to avoid this is to know how much something should cost up front and ask questions up front.
Latin America has a culture of negotiation. They will always ask for a higher price than what they're expecting to get, usually 50% higher, sometimes 100% higher, double the price. They're just expecting you to negotiate. They expect everyone to negotiate. So they don't treat expats any differently in that regard. The difference is that most expats don't negotiate. They're just like, okay, it's $2. Okay, here's $2, when really they were only expecting $1 out of it. So, and negotiation doesn't apply everywhere. If you go to Supermaxi or the mall, there's no negotiation there. But if you go to the Mercado or street vendors, always negotiate.
Right, and find out before you get into a taxi how much it's going to cost so that you are not surprised, because they don't all use meters. Most of them are very reputable. We've only had this happen to us once, or was it twice?
A couple of times.
Yeah,
where the taxi driver did not have a meter or didn't turn it on, and then when we got there it was like two times more. So you just need to make sure they turn on their meter when you get in the car, or just ask them cuánto cuesta before you get in. Do not get in the car and then ask before, because they know that if you ask before, then they have to quote the real price, or you're not going to get in. Let's go to the next guy.
Exactly. And another thing we've been hearing more of lately we've been hearing this since we've lived here, is the gringo pricing for rents and for housing. That is a reality in some areas. We hear people are throwing out these outrageous numbers to see if somebody bites. Again, it's a buyer beware situation. You have to ask the questions and negotiate.
Number 3 is we were afraid of getting a parasite. And that's a real possibility, because I had Montezuma's revenge on a beach vacation in Mexico. It ruined half my trip. I was really unhappy about that. So we were kind of concerned that that might be an ongoing issue when we moved to Latin America. The reality is it hasn't been, for us at least.
No, but when we first moved to Cuenca, our friend Debbie told us how she was just recovering from getting an amoeba, and she was really sick. We're talking emergency room sick. She said the doctor told her she got that from eating street food. Mm-hmm. So the reality is that if you're eating questionable food, you may get sick. There are parasites here, but we have been very lucky not to have any. But we're cautious. We wash our fruits and vegetables thoroughly. We eat at reputable places. We do not eat street food.
Yeah, we also don't drink the tap water unless we know it's safe to drink.
Yeah.
Luckily, everywhere we've lived so far, well, except Olón, we were able to drink the tap water. In Olón, we had 5-gallon jugs of water delivered. I'm very thankful we haven't had any issues. In fact, I just got tested for a parasite. I was clean. There was nothing in there. So after over 5 years, we have not had one.
However, a lot of you are really fearful about this, and we totally get it, because when you do get sick, you're really sick. So take those precautions and wash your fruits and veggies.
Yeah, and I think it's funny too that everybody thinks, oh, you go to Latin America, you're going to get a parasite or some sort of infection. Well, right now there's a massive listeria outbreak going on in the United States. So it's not just limited to Latin America.
Right.
If you're worried about foodborne illnesses, you need to worry about everywhere, not just other countries.
Number 4 is we were afraid we wouldn't like it. And I was really worried about this one. JP had to talk me down off the ledge a couple times, and he just kept reminding me that it doesn't have to be forever. So if we don't like it in Cuenca or in Ecuador, we can leave. Luckily, that was not the case for me or for us, but a lot of people have that same fear, and it's understandable because you're moving to a different country, you're dealing with language issues and a completely new culture, and there are going to be some serious highs and some serious lows.
It is a major commitment moving abroad, and it can seem like it's going to be really difficult to leave if you want to, but it's really not. If you don't like it, it's the same process in reverse to go home or go to a different country. And sometimes you can find a place that maybe fits your personality better and maybe not as much culture shock. And it's really hard to predict if that's going to affect you until you're actually living in it. And sometimes we call it the honeymoon phase. It could take a year or two of living in a country before the honeymoon phase wears off and you realize that you just don't like it because the culture is so much different. You might get sick of the language trying to learn it. Number 5 is that we were afraid we would be lonely or bored. Moving abroad is a lot like going to school on the first day when you don't know anybody, you feel all alone and all by yourself, like everybody's looking at you. But once you're here for a while, that kind of goes away. For us, it really wasn't a big concern because we had each other, and a lot of people move here as singles, and that's a much bigger concern for them. However, we were still afraid that we weren't going to be able to make friends or that we would be bored and not have anything to do.
Yeah, and the reality is that is not the case. There is so much to do here, and the expat community is super supportive too. So when we first landed in Cuenca, we met a whole bunch of other expats at Apartamentos Otorongo, and they really took us under their wing and showed us around, and it was so awesome. And like I said, there is so much to do, but you do again have to put yourself out there.
I always call Apartamentos Otorongo the expat landing zone because there's so many expats go there because it's a short-term stay place. So you can stay for a few weeks or a few months if you want to. We know somebody that stayed there for an entire year. So it's a really great place to meet other expats. And that's how we made all of our first group of friends, and we used to hang out with them quite a bit. We also joined a Spanish class, and we met a bunch of other expats there, and we were friends with some of them. We actually have made quite a few Ecuadorian friends through all the different activities that we've been involved in, including Amelia's belly dancing.
Yeah, you want to talk about intimidating. My first few classes, oh my gosh, especially since everybody was like 30 years younger than me and much more beautiful and exotic.
Oh, I disagree.
Well, thank you. But that was a great way to really, not be bored and not be lonely.
Number 6 is we were really afraid of the language barrier, and it still can be frustrating at times, especially when we need help and we can't communicate effectively with someone. Or like I was really afraid in the beginning about finding a doctor who spoke English because, I mean, we were learning Spanish, we're still learning Spanish. I say we have functional Spanish. I do not have Spanish that's good enough to talk to a doctor about health issues. And that was a major concern of mine.
The main thing to remember here is that you just have to try, keep plowing through. You do not have to be perfect. The locals are very forgiving. They're really happy if you try to speak to them, and they will help you.
And you can also rely on language apps. If you use Google Translate, you can download the offline library so that if you're not connected to the internet, you can still use the translate feature. It works really well. We use it once in a while. We get our point across, and lots of times the Ecuadorians enjoy a little giggle at our expense, and we're happy with that.
Number 7 is the fear of bad infrastructure. And for me, this was the fear of having unreliable internet and electricity because I was still working full-time with my job, and I was completely paranoid that it was just going to cut out in the middle of meetings. And actually, it did at times.
We were also worried about the water, being able to drink it or have access to clean water. Like we talked about earlier, we didn't want a parasite. That turned out not to be an issue. I also had this vision in my head that the roads would be like Romancing the Stone, where we would be bouncing around on a bus over a dirt road on a mountainside. That is not the case, especially here in Ecuador. The roads are actually really good, especially the interprovincial highways are really nice.
We were also really worried that we wouldn't be able to find a nice house that would take both of our dogs.
Yeah, we kind of had this perception that housing in other countries, especially Latin America, was kind of bad. We have programmed with this vision in our head, and reality is that there's a lot of really nice places that expats live in and that the locals live in too. In fact, all of the places that we've rented in Ecuador are owned by Ecuadorians, and some of them live in very similar places, even some of them in the same buildings.
And you can flush the toilet paper in a lot of these new places too. I know that is a big fear of a lot of you out there. And you know what? If you do end up in a place where you cannot flush, you get used to it. It's okay.
Infrastructure in terms of internet and electricity, also very reliable. We've had very little issues with it. In fact, our internet here is a lot faster for a fraction of the cost than it is back in the United States.
Yeah, it has gotten so much better since we first moved to Ecuador. A lot of the new condo buildings have backup generators too, so if there is a power outage, then you got that generator that kicks in and takes over.
Number 8 is we were afraid of bad health care. And this was before we decided to finally move, because we honestly thought the United States had the best healthcare system in the world. Boy, were we wrong. It is just not true, but that was kind of our belief system. So we were concerned if we moved to Latin America, we wouldn't have good healthcare And that was a major concern with me because of my back issues.
Yes, and we have been so happy with the quality of care we've received. What's cool to me is that JP was prescribed Nucleo, which you can't even get in the United States, and it helped him immensely. I think he only took it for 3 weeks?
3 months.
3 months. Yeah, and it helped him with his neuropathy. There's a lot of other medications that are available here.
In the movies, you always see the foreign hospitals depicted as dirty, disgusting, overcrowded places. So that was kind of the vision we had in our head before we moved abroad and actually learned what the reality is. In the big cities in Latin America, you're going to find really high quality healthcare. And thanks to rating systems like CEO World and the World Population Review, you can get kind of a more balanced perspective on the quality of healthcare and also the affordability of it. We're just so shocked still at the quality that we get for the cost here in Ecuador. Ecuador has a very good private healthcare system. The public system struggles a bit with funding and they're understaffed and they're lacking some medications. The private system does not have those issues. And contrary to popular belief, it's not just for expats. There are millions of Ecuadorians that use the private healthcare system. We have private healthcare, private insurance, and God, we've just been so happy and so thankful to have it. We recently talked about all of our healthcare experiences in a recent live stream. I also wrote a blog post about it with all of the costs and the quality of the procedures. And we had several doctor's visits and lots of different things like MRI and colonoscopy. Check below for that link so that you can learn more about that.
Number 9 is the fear of not being able to find the things we need, otherwise known as consumerism. We were really worried that we were not going to get the basics that we needed. And I'm not going to lie, JP's right. I was missing my Amazon. I definitely had some Amazon withdrawal because when we moved here 5 years ago, it was extremely difficult to get anything from Amazon. But let me tell you, we have adapted. It is true that for some things there is not as much of a selection, but you find other options. We go on a scavenger hunt is what I used to like to call this when we lived in Cuenca, and we would go to all the little mom and pop shops and find the different things that we need, and you find other things that are available from Ecuador and from other countries that we may not find in the United States.
They do have large one-stop shop stores like Mega Maxi and Corral and Hypermart, but it's not the same. They just don't have the same level of selection for things. They might have one model or no models of what you're looking for. In the US, that's one thing that we've definitely mastered, and that is being able to find literally anything that you need. And if you can't find it in real life, you can always order it on Amazon because they have everything. And it was a bit of an adjustment. To be honest though, we found everything, and we also simplified and minimized our life. It also saved us money. So we've just kind of adapted to not being rampant consumers like we used to be.
Yeah, and I have to say, sorry Amazon, but I don't miss you. I'm glad we broke up.
All right, number 10, the last one. We were afraid of being homesick, although this really wasn't the major concern of ours because we were already geographically dispersed across the country from our family and some of our older friends.
Homesickness is also about missing your environment, what you're familiar with, which is extra hard when you move to a new environment, which you have no familiarity with at all, and you don't have your family and friends there to help you. So this is very real.
A lot of people also miss their grandchildren, especially the retirees who move abroad. They miss their grandkids and their kids. They miss those graduations, births, birthdays, all kinds of stuff. And sometimes that can be overwhelming and is one of the reasons why a lot of expats end up moving back home.
Yeah, it is a tough one. You do have things like FaceTime and Zoom, WhatsApp video that you can do to call and connect with your family all the time, but it's of course not the same as being with them in person. We know family members that come here and visit their family and vice versa. People go back to the States regularly, so you can do that as well. You just need to budget your time and your money for that. This is why it is so important to move to an area with a strong expat community, especially if this is your very first time moving abroad, because they will really help you get comfortable in your new surroundings.
Yeah, and then once you've lived abroad for a while and you get comfortable with it, then you can move outward. We know a lot of people that do that. They start in a very popular area and then move to a more locals area that's a little bit more authentic and not as many expats.
We have absolutely no regrets about moving to Ecuador back in 2017. We did have a lot of fears, but those fears were unfounded and they were really fueled by negative YouTube videos we watched and the news media and just decades of propaganda.
The reality of living abroad has been far better than what we ever expected. We have no plans to leave Ecuador, although we do plan to travel a lot more and show other popular expat destinations.
Yes, we do. It's so much fun, and we had a great time visiting Mexico, but we were homesick.
A huge thanks to all of our patrons who make our channel possible. Without the support of our patrons and our viewers, we just could not do this.
Yes, thank you so much. We truly appreciate it, and we will see you all in our next video.
Ciao.
Ciao.